And welcome to SW19 for a special edition of SWIPE. Coming up, strawberries and tweets, how tech is changing tennis. Glass comes to the UK. Will Brits embrace Google's latest gadget? Domo Arigato, Mr. Roboto. Meet Japan's Android news anchors. And monsters, aliens, Mordor and more. Sci-fi and fantasy rule our games review. From Fred Perry to Andy Murray, technology has changed in tennis a lot over the past 80 years. Huge developments have been made in equipment, clothing, broadcasting, audience interaction and of course line decisions. But what do these changes mean for the players and the fans? Sky's Katie Spencer has been finding out.
Steeped in tradition, Wimbledon is perhaps not the place you'd automatically associate with being ahead of its time. But while it may be the oldest tennis tournament in the world, a great deal of work goes into ensuring the competition is at the cutting edge of technology. Today, calling a serve is a much easier decision thanks to net cord sensors which pick up the tiniest of vibrations. Hawkeye is also standard. Wimbledon was the first Grand Slam to use the electronic line calling system across 4 courts.
The umpires and the Hawkeyes are teamed together to get the best results for the players. It makes it a lot more fairer for them, gives them a second chance if it's on the tight claw that they think's right.
But you don't have to have tickets to centre court to feel a part of the action. This year's competition is one of the most social media savvy experiences that Wimbledon's ever had, starting with selfies.
A daily Twitter picture competition is just one part of a push this year to go all out on user-generated content. During last year's 2-week competition, 6.6 million Wimbledon-related tweets were sent. This year, whether you're looking down from Murray Mount or watching with your feet up at home, a special social command centre will be crunching through the data to work out what everyone's talking about. And there's plenty to be tweeting. Online, Wimbledon's Slam Tracker technology has analysed over 8 years' worth of historical Grand Slam data. From serve speeds to previous clashes, it works out what a player needs to do to get that all-important win.
It does really help the fans understand what's going on. I mean, you see players hitting a 50-point rally, 50-shot rally, and it looks absolutely amazing, but knowing the effort that's gone into that and getting greater insights into the match helps Wimbledon be at the forefront of tennis around the world.
But for fans that have camped through the night to get courtside, just how important is it to share the experience?
We have to show it off and tell everybody what we're doing and, make them jealous that we get to do something that's cool while we're here.
And if you're constantly looking at your phone on your laptop, you're not always watching the action.
People are missing the tennis now because they're on their phone checking, what's going on in the fake world.
We might not be able to control who comes away this year's big Wimbledon winner, but organisers are determined to serve up a social media experience that's faultless. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Well, now I'm joined by Richard Newman, who's sports reporter for Sky News Radio. Richard, we saw in Katie's piece there a lot about the changes in technology, and you've seen a lot of changes yourself covering the tournament. Has it made the sport better for you?
Absolutely, it's better for fans and for players. Hawkeye's the biggest thing. It's been around about 8 years now. The fans and the players can get involved with each other when they watch it on the screen. Those dodgy line calls can be wiped out. And they just move on from it. And that's the biggest thing that we've had in tennis over the last few years.
The stats have changed too, and the roof, of course.
Yes, in terms of stats, it's no longer just about aces and unforced errors. There's a whole wealth of knowledge for anoraks and normal tennis fans just to get involved with as well. And the roof here at Wimbledon, obviously we've got one on centre. There's going to be one on number 1 court as well. It does change things for players. It tends to slow things down. It's generally seen that when Roger Federer beat Andy Murray in 2012, it did play into the hands of Federer. But it's good for the organisers and for the fans because when the rain comes, they get to complete the matches.
Although there is an argument, isn't there, that sport is all about player talent. Are we losing some of that now?
I don't think so, because the balance is right in tennis at the moment. A player only gets 3 challenges per set plus an extra one in the tie-break. If they win a challenge, they keep that challenge, and if they lose it, then they lose another challenge. So they can't go too far with it at the moment. As things stand at the moment, the balance is right.
And hasn't John McEnroe made some controversial comments about this issue?
Yes, his latest idea is to get rid of umpires and lines judges, for the players to call their own scores, to use the challenges. That would probably be taking it too far. That would probably be detrimental to the sport.
Okay, Richard Newman from Sky News Radio, thanks for joining us. You're watching Swipe. Coming up, robot anchorwoman, is this the newsreader of the future? But first, away from the clinking of champagne glasses here, across town the focus is on a glass of a whole different kind. We've heard plenty about Google Glass, and now it's arrived in the UK with the company asking for testers to try it out. But will Britain embrace the technology? Sky's Joe Tidy has been finding out.
Turn right on Brewer Street.
By now we're used to the slick promos of Google Glass, but this one is different. Recognise the setting? That's right, Google's futuristic specs have come to the UK, and at a suitably slick launch event, the company opened up shop to Brits. Like in the US, a limited number of units are up for grabs as part of the Explorer programme. It encourages people to give Google feedback. The glasses will cost you £1,000 and they're still being described as prototypes.
Consumers in the UK and inventors in the UK and developers in the UK have a very rich heritage of embracing new technology and inventing new technology. And so I think part of the spirit of that is that we see a lot of early adopters and people who want to test new technology, be on the bleeding edge, use it and build for it. And so they're the people who we're hoping will jump on board.
Okay, Glass, record a video.
The Explorer programme has proved very successful in the US. Google won't say how many people are wandering around wearing their specs, but some estimate there could be as many as 300,000. Here in the UK, they could take some getting used to. To use the full functionality of Glass, users are encouraged to do things like this, which might go down well in, say, San Francisco, but how will it go down in Scunthorpe? American artist Gretchen Andrew has been using Glass for a year on both sides of the Atlantic.
There are more of them floating around in San Francisco, and the population is having conversations about technology all the time, whereas here people might have heard of it, they are getting to understand what it could be, what it isn't. There's a lot more confusion around what it does and doesn't do.
Google is acutely aware that people feeling self-conscious when they wear the device could hold the expansion back, and that's why they've released a large range of different designs to try and turn this technology device into a fashion item. There's talk of deals with big-name brands like Oakley's and Ray-Bans on the horizon, but it remains to be seen if this will help enamour us Brits to the technology.
There's a couple of problems with Google Glass in the UK. Number one is the Great British Reserve. We're people that don't talk to each other on the tube. So the chances of mindlessly sort of saying, OK, Glass, take a photo, people are going to get nervous about it. But like all of these things, the idea of sitting and using your laptop 5 years ago, it would have been horrific. Now it's commonplace. So we'll get used to it.
Google won't say how many units are on offer, and they're keeping tight-lipped on how sales have gone so far. But it looks like we're going to have to get used to the sight of their high-tech specs. Joe Tidy, Sky News.
You're watching Swipe. Coming up, Project Livewire. We take a look at Harley Davidson's electric bike. But first, if you're a fan of Blade Runner or Battlestar Galactica, you'll be familiar with stories of machines replacing humans. But what sounds far-fetched appears to be getting ever closer if an exhibition in Japan is anything to go by. Sky's Stuart Duggan explains.
Inside Tokyo's Science Museum, a staple of science fiction has come alive. Uncannily realistic, from skin detail through to tiny facial twitches, 3 incredibly lifelike androids have been giving visitors an insider look at what the future holds for robotics.
Its form is very human-like, but its expressions are very stiff. It's a bit scary.
Scary she may be, but Kodomoroid is an incredibly clever piece of engineering, one which could easily put reporters like me out of a job. Pre-programmed every morning to read news headlines and weather reports, robots like these could eventually mean we wake up to our own personalised anchorman in the home. If that's not your cup of tea, how about an android babysitter to tuck in the kids at night? Otonoroid is remotely controlled. Users speak and move through the android, seeing through its eyes.
It was a bit creepy, but once you get used to it, it's quite interesting. And it's interesting when you think about how those sort of things could one day actually be your friend, or used in elderly care, or a variety of fields.
Japan has for quite some time been a world leader when it comes to robotics. The country's Prime Minister has even talked about staging a Robot Olympics in 2020 when it hosts the actual games. Given what scientists are already able to achieve, science fiction could be moving from the cinema screen to real life in the very near future. Stuart Duggan, Sky News.
You're watching Swipe. Coming up, bridging the gap, how a microchip has helped a paralysed man regain movement. But first, if I say the word motorbike, you can probably almost hear the deafening roar of an engine. But not so with this bike. Sky's Chloe Culpan has been taking a look at Harley Davidson's Project Livewire.
Not quite the sound you'd expect from a Harley Davidson. This is the company's first electric motorcycle, but Livewire is still a work in progress.
When you look at it, when you hear it, it may seem different, but you'll also realize it's quite similar in the sense that it has emotion, it has character, it has attitude. And that's what Harley Davidson's always been about and what we'll always be about, electric or otherwise. And we're not walking away from what we've been, we're just adding to it.
Harley Davidson is taking the bike to 30 cities across the US this year and Canada and Europe in 2015. At the moment, the test bike has a top speed of 92 miles per hour. It takes 3.5 hours to recharge and on average will go for more than 50 miles. The company is using the tour to find out if this specification is what customers want.
This can be a lot of things, and that's what we're going to learn. This could be someone's third motorcycle in their garage. This could be their first and primary motorcycle. It could be someone who's never decided to have a motorcycle before that now gets inspired by this.
We don't know how much the new electric bike will cost yet, but as the tour continues, we'll see just how charged up people get about a quiet, eco-friendly Harley Davidson. Chloe Culpan, Sky News.
Coming up, the E3 games to watch out for. But first, here's a roundup of anything you might have missed over the past few days. Details about the first phone from Microsoft and Nokia have been released. The X2 is Microsoft's debut Android handset and is a follow-up to the original X. The company bought Nokia's mobile phone division for £4.4 billion in April. At Google's annual developers conference, the company revealed more about its Android Wear operating system, an ingenious bit of kit which looks set to make us all fatter. How do you fancy having the power to order a pizza in less than 20 seconds?
And then I can quickly swipe to see and repeat my last order. Just one more tap to pay, and the pizza's on its way.
It would seem size is starting to matter at Apple. We've got used to seeing the 4-inch iPhone 5, but leaked details from suppliers in China appear to show plans for 2 bigger devices. The largest is a 5.5-inch phone, so similar in size to Samsung's Galaxy Note 3. What a whopper! A paralysed man has been able to move his fingers and hands using his thoughts thanks to a microchip implanted in his brain. Ian Burkhart from Ohio has been unable to move from the chest down after a diving accident. He's the first person to use NeuroBridge, which reconnects the brain directly to muscles. And finally, I've found the perfect way to get to work. Talk about Star Wars come to life. This is the Effects Hoverbike. It can go at 45 miles per hour and will cost around £50,000 when it comes on the market in 2017. But hey, that's plenty of time to save. Now, if tennis isn't really your thing and you're finding the World Cup a bit tame, Cameron Robinson from GameSpot has got a few fantasies to get you excited.
So if you played Far Cry 3 and you enjoyed the kind of playground, hunt whatever you want, kill whatever you want, take over the map kind of gameplay, then Far Cry 4 looks like it's going to have this, but just more. So it's not on a jungle island this time. Far Cry 4 is set like at the base of the Himalayas. But the idea is that you can, as a player, you can explore that whole kind of world, climb up the mountains, jump off the top, wingsuit down into enemy fortresses and kind of take them over. So it looks like a lot more of the same really fun gameplay. But the difference is the whole thing is now co-op as well. So you can, have fun in the world, blowing stuff up, riding elephants and everything, but with a friend. In terms of story, though, we've got like another crazy bad guy. Last time it was Vas, who was this kind of bully, and this time it's this really interesting guy called Pagan Min, and he's like the dictator, of the whole country that you've smuggled yourself into. And he's like the best friend that you've got, but he's also, you know he's trouble, you know he's bad for you, so there's a really interesting kind of dynamic there. But it looks like a lot more fun, just like Far Cry 3, lots of blowing stuff up, and elephants, so yeah.
Should I stay or should I go?
So, if you're a fan of the original Alien film, then Alien Isolation is definitely a game you're going to want to look out for. Previously, Alien games have been kind of hit or miss. The most recent Aliens game we had was Colonial Marines, which was a bit of a flop. But this one is very much in the feel of the Alien film, not Aliens. So the key thing is, there's one alien, it's not a shooting game, it's survival horror. It's all about escaping and hiding from this alien and working your way through the environment. So the story is you actually play as Ellen Ripley's daughter, and you kind of go in search of your mother after she kind of disappears. You find the flight recorder from the Nostromo, and you go and you try and track them down, and you come across the alien. And everything just fits in exactly with the film. So the sound effects are the same, the environments are the same, all the screens have that kind of VCR kind of interference that you'd expect, and it just looks incredibly atmospheric, so I'm really excited for this one. So if you've been searching for a good Lord of the Rings game, I think we might finally have it. This time, it looks like we could have something quite special on our hands.
Find an orc leader, make him a war chief.
Shadow of Mordor takes place after The Hobbit, so Sauron's kind of been defeated and he's returning to Mordor, you know, the big boss is coming home, and this kind of messes up the whole ecosystem there because it's kind of being controlled by the Knights of Gondor. They've kind of taken over Mordor and they're guarding the Black Gates, but it's been a long time since they've had any trouble, so they kind of relaxed. Now the game begins, you are actually one of these rangers from Gondor, and the game begins by you getting slaughtered as Sauron returns. However, you're then revived by this other enemy and you're turned into a wraith, and then it's your job to kind of exact revenge on the people who killed you and your family. But the reason why it looks really interesting is the combat is really, really slick. It looks a bit like Assassin's Creed. But also, as you go around and taking out these orc captains that are based around the landscape, they level up if they manage to kill you, or if you take out one, another one will rise to power. So there's like constant politics amongst the enemies, which looks really interesting. So every time you play, it's going to be slightly different. So everyone's hoping that The Evil Within will kind of be the spiritual successor to the original Resident Evil kind of games. Before it went all action-y with Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6, the idea is you are this detective and you encounter this evil and all of your kind of fellow cops are killed, and then you wake up in this really strange demonic world and you got to try and get your way out. But it looks like it's going to have that real thrilling survival horror aesthetic all the way through, so another one to be excited about.
Well, that's it for this week. Don't forget you can catch up with all the breaking stories on Sky News for iPad, our smartphone app, and skynews.com. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.